The Institute for Democratic Education, in cooperation with the Boston University Radio Institute, presents another program in its series, Lest We Forget These Great Americans, stories of Americans who will never die. These Great Americans, with Quentin Reynolds as narrator. A series of programs designed to bring you the stories of men and women who dedicated their lives to the principles set down by America's founders, that all men are created equal. Today's story is about a man you know. His name was
Wendell Willkie. On an October day in 1944, a clergyman climbed to his pulpit to speak a simple eulogy for this great American who had passed from our midst.
Wendell Willkie has passed from our sight. Into 4 years of public life, he crowded more activity and achievement than most men will attain in a lifetime. No longer will we hear from his lips those characteristic words, fellow Americans. But the ideals he espoused will be enshrined in millions of hearts, and, please God, will be expressed in America's national life.
But that is the end of the story. For millions of Americans, it was Philadelphia 1940 when we first began to hear the name of this tousle-haired, grinning man, Willkie.
First ballot, Wendell Willkie.
Second ballot, third ballot, fourth ballot, fifth ballot, and on to the sixth. And the convention's choice for the office of the President of the United States, Wendell Willkie. Before a wildly cheering crowd, the new presidential nominee stepped forward to make a promise to the people.
I promise you a crusading, aggressive, fighting campaign to bring unity to America.
Unity. That was Wendell Willkie. He set out on a campaign that had him making 12 speeches a day in schools, armories, ballparks, factory yards. 28,000 miles, 500 speeches, 13 million listeners. And while he toured, talking till his voice gave out, the people began to remember him. Things like this they remembered.
Back in college, we used to call him Win. He got into Indiana University when he was 15. And did he ever become the campus rebel? I remember one day we were telling stories on the porch of the fraternity house. And someone told a story with kind of an accent, you know. Well, this Willkie kid with a red sweater comes bouncing up and jumped on us.
Listen, you fellas, I don't like that kind of story.
Listen to him, will you?
I don't like stories that need dialects to get a laugh. My grandfather talked with an accent, and he was foreign born, but that didn't make him any less American.
You keep shouting around like that, Win, and you'll never get pledged to a fraternity.
Isn't that too bad? I don't care about him anyhow. I don't care about anything exclusive. I don't believe in anybody belonging to anything anybody else can't belong to. I don't want to buy my way into anything.
Yes, that was Willkie in college. And it wasn't until his senior year that he found a fraternity he wished to join. When he got out, it was the law. Before that, he'd got to know the people, though. He'd worked in the fields, harvested in Minnesota, worked in the oil fields of Texas, husked corn in Iowa, worked as a bouncer in Colorado, and traveled the countryside as a peddler. He got to know people, to know many things. Things like the fact that fascism was nothing new, nothing foreign. It wasn't. We had it back in 1923 and way before that, right here in this country. Only then they didn't call it fascism. They called it...
KKK, open up!
Come on, open that door.
Get away from here! I'll call the police! You have no right to come away! No!
All right, boys, there he is. You know what to do with him.
All right, you. You got your warning to move out of this city.
This is my home. My family has lived here ever since.
Aye. We're not here to argue. You got your warning. You decided to be smart and not pay attention to it. Now you're taking the consequences. All right, hold him, you man.
Please.
This is for your religion, and this is for forcing yourself on us, and this is for ignoring an order of the Klan.
That was in 1923, in a city dominated by the Klan, where in trial by law, 75% of the jury might be Klansmen, where white-robed figures directed traffic in the streets, ignoring the police. In this city ruled by murder and terror, a young lawyer dared to challenge that rule. That man was Wendell Willkie, and he was not afraid to bring the fight into the open.
I'm here to serve warning on the Ku Klux Klan to stop their reign of terror now.
Are you on the payroll of the Catholics and Jews too, Willkie?
I'm on the payroll of decency and fair play. And my pay is a big round zero. That satisfy you?
I'm with you, Mr. Willkie. What can we do to get rid of the Klan?
We'll prove to them that in this country, all people have a right to live in the peace and sanctity of their homes, no matter what their race, creed, color, or political beliefs. Yes, mister, we'll fight bigotry and corruption wherever we find it. And we'll win.
Yes, that was Willkie. The people remembered that. And when the same kind of political chips were down in 1940, Willkie hadn't changed. It was a tough hand he had to play then. The stakes were the presidency. One day a reporter came to him with a copy of a magazine called Social Justice.
Mr. Willkie, have you seen this magazine?
I sure have.
Any comment? Comes out for your candidacy, you know.
I know. Now listen. I'm not interested in the support of undemocratic movements that attack any of our people because of their race or religion.
You repudiate its support, then?
Absolutely. I have no place in my philosophy for such beliefs. There's no hedge clause about that. I want to make it completely and absolutely clear.
Won't this stand cost you some votes?
Look, I don't have to be president of the United States, but I do have to keep my beliefs clear to live with myself. I'm not enough interested in being president to compromise with my fundamental beliefs.
Can I quote you on that, Mr. Willkie?
You sure can.
The pattern of a man was emerging as Wendell Willkie took his message to the people up and down the land. The pattern of a man who didn't fit into a political pigeonhole. A man whom his own party didn't quite understand. But the people understood him, because when the returns were in that November, it stood like this.
Wendell Willkie has lost, but his total vote was the largest popular vote ever received by a candidate of his party in the history of the United States, winning or losing.
Wendell Willkie lost that campaign, but he tossed his shaggy head and plunged into a bigger fight. Now a greater task awaited him. The tides of Europe's war began to lap our shores, and as the sands of the Atlantic coast began to stain with the oil of sunken tankers, Willkie's voice was heard again. It was 1941. We were still at peace. But Willkie saw the nature and ultimate scope of the war, while it was still largely a party issue in our Congress. Returning from England, where he had visited Churchill with a letter from President Roosevelt, he found Congress debating about
Convoys, our ships to convoy cargoes to Britain. Mr. Chairman, I'm against it.
So am I.
I vote against it.
But Willkie's voice said,
It doesn't matter whose idea it is, the administration's or anybody else's. What does matter is that the stuff gets over there in time to do some good. It isn't our war yet, but those people are fighting it for us.
Some people said their champion was changing sides. The newspaper polls showed he was losing his popularity, but Willkie stuck to his guns. It was one of the strangest phenomena in American history. Here was a man who'd been defeated for the highest office in the land, going to the man who had defeated him and saying,
Mr. President, I'd like to take a trip around the world. I want to see the people that are on our side. There are so many of them, Mr. President, people of all creeds, all colors. I want to see what they're like, know what they're thinking. In other words, sir, I want to help make that kind of world they're fighting for. When can I leave?
When Mr. Willkie came home, he had found what he was looking for. It was the doctrine of
one world. Those are the two words that must be branded into the intellect of every man and woman on this earth today.
In 1944, the man who had lost an election and won the hearts of the people again suffered another defeat. But to Wendell Willkie, the loss of a party nomination was not the important thing. What mattered to him was this.
I've got to live with myself, and what is most important is not that I attain office, but that the principles I stand for should gain acceptance.
Before he could see his dream of a future world come true, Wendell Willkie died. His age? 52. The nation, the world, was shocked. Wendell Willkie lay in state in a church in New York on a rainy October day. The people came by thousands. Outside the church, they talked of him. One man took a worn clipping out of his pocket and said,
I clipped this out when he said it once. I clipped it out and saved it. He said, our way of living together in America is a strong but delicate fabric. It is made up of many threads. It has been woven
over many centuries by the patience and sacrifice of countless liberty-loving men and women. It serves as a cloak for the protection of poor and rich, of black and white, of Jew and Gentile, of foreign and native born. For God's sake, let us not tear it asunder. For no man knows, once it is destroyed, where or when man will find its protective warmth again.
Yes, that was Wendell Willkie, a man who never won a campaign and never lost a principle, a man who never held an office and never let go of the American ideal, lost an election and won the faith of the people, a man who was right at a most crucial time. He will never die, but I think the words of the minister at his burial can best sum up this great American.
all the tributes we may pay to the memory of this great American will be a mockery and a sham unless we carry ever upward and onward that torch which he has flung to us with falling hand.
Yes, Wendell Willkie never stopped fighting to uphold the principles on which this country was founded. He fought bigotry and prejudice wherever he found it. Let us not allow the forces of darkness to organize again. Let us keep faith. Faith with Wendell Willkie.
This program was brought to you by the Institute for Democratic Education in cooperation with the Boston University Radio Institute. Listen in again next week to another program of the 10th series of Lest We Forget These Great Americans.